It's interesting that I think vacation is over tonight for everyone. It's tonight, because it's the night before. It's like Or L'Arba'asa, and it's a little lonely here on vacation. And it's interesting that it's very, very nice for families to spend time together. I find it, it's very, very good for families. I'm not saying it's always picture perfect. I don't like I always think of the coloring book picture of the Pesach Seder, that your kids color in, and you bring in, with the Zaidi and the Tati and the brothers and sisters, and they even have the token wine spilled on the table, but it's not a bad spill, and that's not what the Pesach Seder looks like, right? That's just not what it looks like, It really there's the older daughter that's insulted. There's the grandfather that's trying to run the Seder his way, and his son-in-law is going crazy from it. There's the wife that's falling asleep. That's the real Pesach Seder, Life is not picture perfect. So when we talk about families going on vacation, it's very healthy for families. Picture perfect, it's not. Not in this real world. It's not a coloring book. But what's interesting is that community-wise, we become a little isolated. No? Naphtali is a little bit isolating. No? We miss each other, no? Be nice, It's nice to be back. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to be here for Shabbos, but I hope the Olam will feel this sense of coming back together again. Be'ezer Hashem. Parshas Beshalach is the parsha of the Shira, Shabbos Shira, very important, Shabbos Shira. And Parshas Beshalach tells a story about the Mitzrayim chasing Klal Yisrael after Yetzias Mitzrayim, and the splitting of the sea. And shockingly, we had no heads up for this story. It's haloi davar. The Sfarim asked this question. I mean, I mentioned several times over the last few weeks HaKadosh Baruch Hu telling Moshe what's going to happen. Paro's not going to listen until I do kol nifla'osai asher b'kirboi ve'acharei chen yishalach eschem, and then he will send you out. And then it doesn't say ve'acharei chen yirdoi ve'achareichem. He doesn't say that. Then it sounds like from every nevuah that Moshe Rabbeinu had, including that first nevuah of Tavdan Elokim al ha'or hazeh, it sounds like the story ends with them leaving Mitzrayim. And then you open Parshas Beshalach, and there was no nevuah about this. Not only that, but in the Bris Bein HaBsarim, there's no indication of it. Avram Avinu is told, Yadaya Teida Ki Ger Yezarach Beres Leilohem Va'avodim V'inu Oisem Arba Meis Shana Ve'acharei Kain Yeitzeu Berchush Gadol V'oz Yikra Hayam. No, it doesn't say that. It just says they will go out Berchush Gadol. End of story. Where's the... Nothing. There's not a remez. There is not a remez that there's going to be a Kriyas Yamsuf. It's a very important question. Why wasn't part of any nevuah, anything? So, one of the beautiful explanations of a pasuk in the song, in the Shira Hayam, is that the pasuk describes, actually before the actual shira, when the pasuk is describing what happened, the pasuk says, Perak Yud Aleph pasuk Chaf Aleph, the pasuk says, Vayosem es hayom lechorava, Hashem made the yam into dry land, Vayibaku hamayim, and the water split. Two things. First of all, Hashem made the water like dry land. It was dry. Something that's impossible, right? Something that's physically impossible, that water should be dry, right? The water stayed water, but it was hard. It's not possible. But that was the nace, that was the impossible nace of Kriyas Yamsuf. Like the Naid Noizlim, like the walls that were walls of rushing water. Not possible. We try to imagine like glass walls, ice walls, something, but we really don't even have the imagination to understand it. But there was this dry land part of Kriyas Yamsuf, and then there was the splitting, right? There was the rows, even Chazal tell us that there were 12 rows. So what are these two things? That the Yam became dry land sounds like it became dry land. And then it says also that there were walls. What were the walls? Right? There was walls. So the Arachayim HaKadosh, this is an interesting thing. The Arachayim HaKadosh over there on that pasuk, and the Gra, brought down the Mamori Pachad Yitzchak brings a Gra, they say the same pshat, with the same explanation. They say that a yam is, if you would get rid of all the water, it would be very hard to get all the way down to the bottom. It's a yam. It goes deep. And that would be a tremendous difficulty for everyone to have to climb all the way down to the bottom, walk across, and then climb all the way back up the mountain on the other side. That would be very difficult. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu did was that the nace was split. Not just the yam was split, but the miracle was split. That there were two aspects. The area where the waters come up close to the surface, that rushing water became walls. But they didn't have to go too far down, because the floor of the yam, of the water, turned dry. And therefore, underneath their feet was water. They were on the water. And also, there were walls of water. That prevented them from having to go all the way down. We lifted the floor. That the water is hardened. And then it's just the upper layer of water that became walls. And that's what the pasuk says. Vayasem es hayam lecharava vayibaku hamayim. Beautiful pshat. That's what the Orach Chaim says. The Gra is on Yeshaya Perek Ches Pasuk Chav Gimel. If you want to look up the Gra, it's on Yeshaya Perek Ches Pasuk Chav Gimel. And he says a similar thing. He says, Kishulei hayam amoik amoik. The bottom of the yam is deep, deep. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu prevented us from having to go to the very bottom. But the truth is that there's a strong makom to try to think a little bit deeper into this, because when HaKadosh Baruch Hu performs a miracle, and it's described in a certain way in the pasuk, so it has to be more than just for convenience sake. For convenience sake, the pasuk doesn't have to record it. Okay, whatever happened that made it doable, like the fact that the Kriyas Hayam, which is such a fundamental part of Yetzias Mitzrayim, it's what's called in Chazal Gemar Geulasan, the end, the grand finale of the Geula from Mitzrayim. Every nuance that happened is important and relevant to what was happening here. And if the way that it happened was that there were walls of water, but that also they didn't walk on the ground, they walked on water, somehow that must be significant to understanding what's happening here. And I want to try to go deep, no pun intended, to go deep and to try to see what is this telling us, the fact HaKadosh Baruch Hu could have just made walls. If it was hard to get to the bottom, there are many ways Hashem can make it easy. Hashem can do anything. But Hashem wanted us to walk on water as if it was dry land. Hashem could have made it dry land. Hashem could do anything, right? So once He could do anything, what He chose to do becomes a question. I can't do anything. So when I do something, whatever I'm doing is just because that's how I'm doing. That's the best I can do. But when you're dealing with a Kol Yachal, HaKadosh Baruch Hu can do anything, so then there's what to learn from why He chose to do things a certain way. And I think there's what to learn from this. So I want to explain a pasuk, and this explanation was given by Rav Hutner in the Pesach Pachad Yitzchak, Mamori Pachad Yitzchak. And it explains a yesod that's very, very fundamental. We touched on it a little bit last week, Shua, but we'll see this week. We'll get a little bit more clarity in it. Every Sunday, we say the following mizmor in the Shir Shal Yom. We say Lashem ha'oretz u'maloya, tevel v'yoshveva. Right, Hashem, the earth belongs to Hashem. The dry land and everyone who lives in it. And then we say, interesting phrase, Ki hu al yamim yisada, because he established it on the water. Ve'al neharos yechayneneha. So, that's interesting. HaKadosh Baruch Hu owns the dry land, right? Lashem ha'aretz u'malaya. You know that's why in Sfarim where you see Lamed Hey Vav before people write their name, very often you'll see in a Sefer, before the name of the person, you'll see Lamed Hey, 2 lines, and a Vav. That stands for Lashem ha'aretz u'malaya. And what it's saying is, I know I'm writing my name like as if it's mine, but everything really belongs to Hashem. It's a very beautiful Derech Eretz way of writing one's name. Hashem owns everything, but I'm taking care of it right now. Lashem ha'aretz u'malaya ben kar. But that's why people write their names that way. But Lashem ha'aretz u'malaya, this world belongs to Hashem. Why does it belong to Hashem? Ki hu al yamim yisada, because he established the earth on top of the water. Roika ha'aretz al hamayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu established the earth on the water. That's the bracha we make every morning. So, how does that follow? Hashem owns the land because he established it on water. What does that mean? How does that flow? Again, pun intended. So it's an unbelievable thing. The Torah tells us, we say in Hallel, Hashamayim shamayim l'Hashem. The Shamayim belong to Hashem. But v'ha'aretz nasan l'bnei Adam. But the earth he gave to people. So it's interesting. There's one pasuk that says the earth he gave to people. There's another pasuk that says the earth belongs to Hashem. That is not a contradiction. That is the reality of human beings living on the world. Lashem ha'aretz u'malaya means HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in full control. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in full control of everything in this world. Hakol bidei shamayim. Everything is in Hashem's hands. Even the word bidei shamayim, because Hashamayim shamayim Lashem. Everything is in Hashem's hands. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in full control. Everything is in His hands. Chutz miyiras shamayim, except for our behavior, our yiras shamayim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu took His full control of the world, and He relinquished some of that control so that we could have free choice. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not relinquish any control, we would not have the ability of having some kind of an input in our own lives. Part of our emunah, and part of why we get rewarded or otherwise, is because we were given control. We make the choice. That choice that we're making is a chutz. It's an exception to Malchus Shamayim. Hakol bidei Shamayim. Everything is in the hands of Hashem. Chutz miyiras Shamayim. Your ability to choose how and where and when and if you're davening Ma'ariv tonight, that's an exception to Malchus Shamayim. Hashem really controls everything, but you have that control. You have Bechira. Chutz miyiras Shamayim, and that's what it means. V'ha'aretz nasan levnei Adam. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu told the waters to move aside, Yikavu hamayim el makom echad v'seira'eh hayabasha, that the earth should reveal itself from being under the water, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was kaiveya that aretz to be the place of man. That was the place of Bechira. That was Bechira. That's the world. Land is the world of Bechira. V'ha'aretz nasan l'bnei Adam. That's where people live. That's what was given to people. Aretz is the place of Bechira, right? That's the purpose of the Aretz, and that's where we do. That's where our stage. That's our hunting grounds. That's where we operate. We, from this entire universe that Hashem made, the Aretz is where Bechira takes place. Now, water is the opposite. Water is a place where man cannot exist. In fact, the only way of killing a person that doesn't involve actually inflicting something upon him is by drowning him, is by placing him in water. Then it's not the pshat that something is killing him, The pshat is that he's unable to exist. Because man needs air, we need to be noishem, we have a neshama, we need to breathe, and water is not a place that a human being could breathe. And that tells us something, not just practically, but it tells us something about the nature of water in Hashem's world, that it's a place that a human being cannot exist. It's a place that's the opposite of the Tzuras Adam. It's opposite of where a person could exist. There are those who say when people go to the mikveh, there are those who say that that's the idea of going into a mikveh and coming out is like being reborn by going into a place that man cannot exist, and then coming out, it's like being reborn. So the water represents a place where man cannot exist. Water, that's Hashemayim Shemayim Lashem. Water, that's where only Hashem is the Melech. There's no person there. That's where Hashem is king. Now, we know, so in the entire world of what Hashem controls is represented by water, which is most of the world, 3/4 of the world. And the area where man is in control, that's represented by the ha'oretz nasan l'bnei adam. However, it's really a little more complex than that. Because while we have choice, do we really have choice? It's not such a simple question. There is a contradiction between the fact that we have choice and the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu already knows what we're going to do. And I want to take a moment, just because of the intelligence of the Olam here, I don't want to portray this in a childish way. I want to say this in a more meaningful way than perhaps you've heard it in the past. It's not just that Hashem could predict what you're going to do, so it's hard to imagine that you have a choice if Hashem knows what you're going to do. It's not like that. I mean, I very, very, very often could predict not just what my wife is going to do, but what she's going to say. Okay? I tell my kids sometimes, they laugh their heads off. I say, go tell mommy, I'm sure a lot of you guys could do that also. Go tell mommy A, B, and C, and then she's going to say D, E, and F. So then tell her G, H, and I, and then she'll say K, L, M. And they come back like, how did you know exactly what she was going to... Okay, I know her for 29 years. But now, does that mean she doesn't have Bechira just because I know what she's going to say? She has free choice, and I just happen to know the choice that she's going to choose. Just like when she goes to the ice cream store, I know exactly which flavor she's going to get, even though she has full choice to get whichever one she wants. That's not the kasha. The kasha is that at the same time, Rabbi say, you have to understand this, at the same time you're making a choice and you don't have a choice. I'll give you a mashal. I like to use this mashal, okay? Everybody here chose to come to a shir tonight. You made a choice, right? To come to a shir tonight. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you a nisayon. Come to the shir or don't come to the shir. Maybe some of you were back and forth. Should I? Shouldn't I? Should I? Shouldn't I? Vacation, I'm tired. But then I get to get out of the house on the other hand. Okay, maybe I'll go. You know? Should I? Shouldn't I? And you made a choice to be here. Okay? Okay, great. You were Bechira to be here. Fantastic. I also made a choice to be here. I could have chosen to stay home or to cancel the shir, and I chose to be here. Did I really have a choice? David, think about it. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wanted you to have a choice tonight if you should go to a shir or not, right? But if I'm not here, you don't have a choice. So in order for you to have a choice, I had to be here, or else there's no shir to go to. So did I have a choice or didn't I have a choice? Yeah, when I'm looking at it from my vantage point, I had a choice. But Hashem knew I was going to be here because He gave you the choice. And He wanted you to have that choice. It was important that you should be here. Do you understand what I'm saying? That each one of us may feel like we have a choice, but we're also the help or the nisayon to our friend. Let's say, David, let's say HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to have a huge nisayon. Should you or shouldn't you punch Rabbi Sonnenschein in the nose? Okay? Now, you don't have that nisayon. I don't think you have any reason to want to punch me in the nose right now. But I could walk over to you and say certain things that, I can't really imagine what, but let's just be in theory. I could walk over to you and say certain things that may make you feel like, you know what, maybe I do want to punch him in the nose. Okay, theoretically that could happen, right? Now let's say HaKadosh Baruch Hu is geyser. David Steierman should have a nisayon. Will he or won't he punch his Rebbe in the nose? That's the nisayon of the night. You're going to go to Olam Haba if you're Aymed ben Nisayon. And otherwise, if you're not Aymed ben Nisayon. This is your nisayon. HaKadosh Baruch Hu set you up. Your whole life, Hashem is waiting to give you that test. It's possible, right? Okay, But if I don't go over and rate you on, you don't have that nisayon. And I have a choice of whether or not I'm going to go over. But do I have a choice? If Hashem wants you to have that nisayon, I need to make a bad choice. That's a problem. But do I have Bechira? Now you may want to tell me there's 50 other ways I could have that nisayon. But no, there's not 50 other ways that you could have the nisayon of doing this to me after you hear this thing from me. There's only one me and only one you. We know each other very well. I don't think anyone could take each other's place. So you need me to do that Aveira in order for you to have that nisayon. Tonight when I came to the shir, you needed me to do this mitzvah. Did I have a choice? And the answer is that at the same time, are you hearing a problem?
I'm right with you.
Okay, in other words, that means you do hear the problem. You hear the contradiction. At the same time, we have a choice. Okay, I'll give you another example. One more example, just for fun. Okay? Let me think of a guy that doesn't wake up for Shachris, like Ben Carr. Okay? Just for example. Okay? Everybody knows that he sleeps late every morning. Okay? So let's say Hashem wants Mrs. Carr to have a nisayon. Will she make a comment to her husband for sleeping late? Okay? I think we all know she hasn't had that nisayon in 20 years, but let's say. Okay? But let's say Hashem wants her to have that nisayon. The only way to do that is for him to wake up late. It's the only way for her to have that nisayon. Does he have Bechira? Think about this stuff. This is a very, very profound thing, because it goes much deeper, because it goes into things that affect the whole Klal Yisrael. It goes into events. It goes into big people that made big decisions that affect everything and everyone. This city exists because people made certain choices that they had Bechira. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu created you to live in this city. And it needed to be created by those people, because if it wasn't created by those people, it wouldn't be the same city. There is a contradiction here. Okay, I think I gave enough examples. Yeah, there's a contradiction here. Yediyah and Bechira. I have free choice, and yet HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows and wants and needs that I should make that choice, even the Averas that I do. That's very complex. That means on some level, we have emunah that I have choice. I have to do tshuva for the mistakes that I make. I am very blessed for the good things that I do. Because I make a choice, I have free choice. It's a fundamental yesod of our emunah, and at the same time, everything I did not have a choice. Both things are true. You want to know how both things could be true? The Rambam says that our minds were not made with the ability to understand that yesod. You do not have the ability to understand it. It is one of the mysteries. If you are stuck now, I like the look on your face. If you are frustrated by this question, you're exactly where the Rambam wants you. Yeah, this is up to Hashem. We don't have to understand this. But this is the reality. What represents my free choice? Aretz. What represents everything's in the hand of Hashem? Mayim. When I'm on the land, is it my free choice or is it Hashem's choice? Well, on the one hand, you're going to love this, the ha'aretz nasan l'bnei adam. But on the other hand, Lashem ha'aretzu malaya. You know why? Kihu al yamim yisada. Because the land is on top of Mayim. That represents the depth of the fact that on the surface we have Bechira, but underneath that there is Yediyah. Okay, it was worth coming tonight for that. Lashem ha'aretz u'malaya teva v'yoshveva ki hu al yamim yisada. Half-leva fellow, unbelievable. Moshe Rabbeinu stands in front of Hashem as Klal Yisrael is getting close to the Yam. There's a raging Yam. The Mitzrayim are behind them. The water is in front of them. They're stuck. Moshe Rabbeinu is davening to Hashem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu appears to Moshe, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Ma titzak Elai, what are you screaming to me? Which is very interesting, because Tafsu omnes avoisam. I mean, that is what we do. We daven. When we're in trouble, we daven. We've been saying Tehillim every single tefillah, every single day since October 7th, because we know our job. We could be across the world, but when Klal Yisrael is in trouble, we daven. That's what we do. Hakol kol Yaakov. That's what we do. So why is Hashem telling Moshe, what are you screaming to me? What do you mean, what am I screaming to you? That's what we do. So Rashi says there, Olai hadavar talui, this is on me. Said my Rosh Hashiva, Olai hadavar talui means, this is my business. Yeah, in other areas, it's your business. But this world of Kriyas Yamsuf is a world that's like coming from Asid Lavai. It's a world that you're stepping into a world that's beyond regular life in this world. This is not regular. What Klal Yisrael experienced by Kriyas Yamsuf was a revelation of the entirety of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan. The Shira ends with the words Hashem Yimlech La'olam Va'ed, because they saw, Chazal tell us, they saw until the end of time. They pointed to Hashem. Could you imagine? They pointed to Hashem. Zeh Keli v'anveyu. Ra'asa shifcha alayam ashalei ra'a Yecheskel ben Buzi. They saw then a revelation of the entirety of Hashem's plan. It was laid out in front of them. They saw the plan. They saw the idea. They saw what Hashem had in mind. They saw what would be. And that's why they couldn't be standing on dry land. Because dry land is v'ha'aretz nasan l'bnei Adam. Hashem said, come into the Yam. I'm going to give you, for this rare exception in time, which happened one time, even by the Yarden, it wasn't like this. It happened one time in history. HaKadosh Baruch Hu invited Klal Yisrael into the world of Yediyah so that they should get a sense of the unbelievable tapestry of the history that was going to come and everything that would happen to the Jewish people and the ultimate Mashiach coming and Asid Lavai and the Kiddush Hashem and the Schar and everything. That's why when we say the Shira, we say it with joy. Because there's a sense, when we're saying Shiras Hayam, there's a sense of this was the moment that our neshamas felt the perfection of the world and the perfection of Hashem's plan. All the mysteries were solved, all the questions were answered. Boy, do we wish we would have the answer to some questions, to some confusion, to understand the pain, the difficulties, the nisyonos that we have individually or that we have as a tzibur. Those minutes that we were in the Yam, everything made sense. They were not on the Oretz anymore. There was no V'ha'aretz Nasan L'bnei Adam. They were in the world of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The understanding of HaKadosh Baruch Hu splitting the sea is a concept of opening up the secrets. In fact, the Gemara tells us, as we all know, we've all learned it, the Gemara tells us that the example of something that's completely lost, avuda mimenu umikol adam, is that it goes bezutai shel yam, it goes into the ocean. Something falls into the ocean. If you find something in the ocean, you could keep it. Because the person's for sure miyayish, it is lost. Right? What happens when the ocean splits open? What happens when you're given access to that? That's what happened by Kriyas Yamsuf. It was a window into an unbelievable world. The Mishnah Berurah brings that the Paiskim say that the person that says Shiras Hayam b'simcha, if somebody says the Shiras Hayam in the morning with joy, Moichlin loy al kol avoynaisav, it brings a full mechila for all of his averos. It's Mishnah Berurah and Hilchos Tefillah. What's the pshat that you get a kapara for all of your averos by saying the Shiras Hayam? The pshat is that the moment that you can rejoice from the fact that we're in the hands of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a plan, and that we're a part of that plan, our ratzain to do averos vanishes. And our connection to the world of Chet vanishes. We're plugged into Hashem's plan. That's what they saw by the Kriyas Yamsuf. They saw this unbelievable gilui of everything. And Rabbi say, that gilui that they saw of everything, we still have with us. If you want to know where we get the strength to be 2,000 years of suffering, 2,000 years of suffering, to be treated the way the world treats us until this very day, If you want to know where we get the strength to optimistically and joyously engage in our Yiddishkeit, it's because we were in the Yam. We saw the plan. We understood, we felt the shleimus of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan, the full glorious tapestry that leads until the end of time. Ad haseif. Hashem yimloich la'ilam v'ed. And the fact that we saw that infused the kayach into us. When we say the shira, when you hear this, the Baal Koreh laning it with that special nigun this Shabbos, you think of that joy that's living in your neshama at that time. If you have the schus to say the shira sayam in the morning with simcha, it reveals that unbelievable simcha, and that is the pshat. That there was no heads up for the Kriyas Yamsuf. The heads up, when the Navi tells you this is going to happen and this is going to happen, that's because it's happening in your world. It's part of your experience. It's something that you could prepare for. It's something that's part of your Avodas Hashem. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu prepared us until going out of Mitzrayim. But Kriyas Yamsuf came out of nowhere. You know why? Because Kriyas Yamsuf comes out of nowhere. Because Kriyas Yamsuf is from a world that's not v'ha'oretz nasan l'bnei Adam. It's from a different world. And that's why it wasn't part of the Nevuah to Avram Avinu. And that's why Ma Titzak Elai, this is not a place to daven about your things. This is my thing. I'm inviting you to look at the world through my eyes for a few moments. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells us. And that's what we experienced in the Yam, and that's what gives us the unbelievable emunah and the simcha that we have. Think of how much we have suffered as a nation, and yet the joy that we can dance with and say Kabbalah Shabbos with and learn Torah with, that joy comes from the fact that we carry within us a very clear knowledge that everything Hashem does is for the good, and that there's an end to all of this, and that when that end comes, Be'ezer Hashem, everything will be as clear as it was when Ra'asa Shivcha Alayam Ashalei Ra'u Hanaviyim Yashakayach. Yeah, I didn't get to the other stuff.